The Red Eye Radio podcast is a service of Freightliner and Detroit.
Now it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Pilot Flying J Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, 866-90 Red Eye. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We'll get back to your calls and comments here on Democrats on the road to impeachment in just a moment. But Eric, I just have to read you this couple of sentences here because this is just mind-boggling. We talked about how the left has analyzed Pete Buttigieg, not recently, but a couple of weeks ago. They were talking about the fact of, is he gay enough? And we went through the different articles. Is he gay enough?
Right.
What is the white male part dominant over the gay portion of him, or does the gay portion of him equalize the white male portion of him? These are the discussions that people on the left are having. If you don't believe me, you ready for this one?
All right.
There's a headline. Yale Women's Studies professor, gay white men are symbols of heterosexuality.
Okay. I didn't see that one coming, but all right.
Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg and his husband offer a vision of heterosexuality without straight people. According to commentary by a Yale University assistant professor in women's gender and sexuality studies responding to the politician's recent image on the cover of Time magazine, which I believe is where the question came after that photo came out. Is he gay enough?
All right.
On the Los Angeles Review of Books website, Professor Greta LaFleur argues the photo is a symbol of heteronormativity.
Yep,
All right,
write that one down. Write that one down.
Now, I'm going to read this. You may not understand it. I'm just going to read it. I'll probably end at some portion. I'm not sure what portion I'm going to end this paragraph here.
You're going to try and read it before your head explodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Here we go. You ready?
All right.
At first glance, one sees the anonymity of Norman Rockwell's mid-century America, the house on particular porch, the timelessness of the couple form. Take another look, and the pillars supporting the unseen roof of the porch start to resemble the ionic columns of the White House. The background becomes a gesture of the promise of possibility. You begin to see the image in the aggregate, and the couple, girded by the backdrop, literally overwhelmed by the household, becomes the timelessness of the entire image. This photo also tells a profound story about whiteness. Above and beyond the fact that almost everything in this photo is itself white. It's such an all-consuming aesthetic. Here, that is, practically resist interpretation like the generically familiar to me a white person porch. The cover photo claims that there's nothing to see because we already know what it is. We have seen this image. We know this couple. We should be comfortable. After an extensive passage in which LaFleur argues whiteness can be and regularly is weaponized by white people, LaFleur goes on to suggest that Pete and his husband may not actually be gay. In certain forms of structural power, such as whiteness, have become detachable from white people. Perhaps this is true of other forms of structural power as well. This is not to make a like race argument, although this is, of course, such a problematic staple of so much theorizing in sexuality studies, so much, I'm almost ready to quit, as it is to make a, quote, like power argument. And the argument I am making, of course, is that this photo is about a lot of things, but one of its defining features is its heterosexuality.
Okay.
It's offering us the promise that our first gay-first family may actually be a straight one.
All right.
So apparently, to this Yale women's studies professor, Pete Buttigieg is not gay enough. The white male supersedes. The white male is dominant over the gay.
So I guess that would apply to all white males who are gay.
All white males who are gay are actually promoting heterosexuality.
Yeah.
I hear Brian laughing through them. I can't make this stuff up, guys. It's this.
You know, I picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue.
You don't remember when we were in college?
No.
You need to do drugs to expand the mind. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Doing drugs expands the mind.
I need to shut down the mind. What do I need for that?
You want to expand the mind? You want to fry your brain?
I think I just did.
This isn't your brain on drugs. This is your brain on liberalism. You want to fry your brain? You can be completely and totally sober and just try to dissect what the hell are they talking about.
I don't want to be sober. I'm done with sobriety. It hasn't been working for me at all.
Wow.
Oh,
that's a great point, though.
What?
We are not, by the way, we are not advocating any use of drugs or alcohol, but
I am.
We have come to the conclusion it might be very, very dangerous for a sober mind to be analyzing liberalism.
A sober mind is a dangerous mind. Oh, my gosh. Way to go, liberals. And by the way, welcome, Mayor Pete, to liberalism.
Yes. Oh.
He wakes up and he's reading that going, what? What? Yeah, well, we told you. Sorry. Congratulations. You're going to be mayor forever. Oh, my gosh. We got to, first of all, we got to make a notation of those new phrases, words that they're just making up.
Oh. By the way, I did make a word up earlier this week. I don't know if you heard about it.
Well,
we got into the discussion of socialism again.
Oh yeah,
and there was a poll out on socialism. You were off that day, and I was talking about. I forgot to tell you about this. We're talking about socialism, and I reiterated what we said before. Americans really aren't socialist. We're gimmeists. Mm-hmm. We want to talk about the gimmiest portion of socialism, but not the takeism part of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you did the takeism?
Takeism, yes.
Yeah.
The takeism of socialism.
Right. Well, that would
so I believe I came up with a new. But I said it's okay because if they come up with new definitions for words all the time, why can't I come up with a new word?
Well, we came up with gimmieism, so why not takeism?
Takeism. Yeah.
That has to apply too.
All right. The heteronormativity. Heteronormativity was the one. Right.
Okay.
Because the picture.
Yeah.
The picture of apparently him and his husband, I guess, whatever.
So for how long?
Heteronormativity.
Right. How long has the left been screaming? We want to be seen as, we want to be included, I guess, in the landscape and the many different photos of what an American family may be. We want to be, LGBTQ, want to be included. Our family photos also are normal, are everyday. We want them to reflect, I guess, the American vision of an American family to reflect our groups as well.
Right, because you would think the average person would look at that and say, whether they agree, and you make this point, whether they agree with the lifestyle or not, would say, that's an attempt to normalize the gay family.
Right.
So it would
Even the president was asked about it the other day.
So it would be.
He said he didn't have a problem with it.
But it would be homo normativity, not hetero normativity.
Yes.
So you have to ask, in liberal gender studies, are they marginalizing the gay family?
Exactly.
By trying to make the point that if you're two white gay males that are married, that you actually are promoting heterosexuality instead of homosexuality.
Right. That you cannot, but think of the thought behind it. You can't be, because what is the argument been? I was born this way. You can't be who you are. This is who I am. That's what LGBTQ has been saying for decades. And now, sorry, modern day liberalism says no.
No, sorry, Mayor Pete. Modern liberal gender studies say no, you can't be gay.
And why are they so heterophobic? Is my next question.
Oh, my. This is just great.
So tell me what they went through when they essentially, tore apart the photo. In their descriptives, they tore it down as to why he's not gay enough.
Right.
What do you want? Do you want two members of the Village People sitting there on the cover of the magazine? I mean, that's a serious question. What is it that you want from Pete Buttigieg if that's who he is?
Julie, I can't think of her last name, the woman who testified, who admitted, said, look, I'm a feminist lesbian who testified against the Equality Act, said the same thing. That what the left is doing is the left, because of their identity politics and because of what they're doing with the Equality Act by stating that a man can be a woman whenever a man wishes to be a woman, which destroys the civil rights movement in this country completely and destroys women's rights, as she said, and she said lesbian and women's rights too. The other thing that it does, as she mentioned, is it brings everybody back to certain stereotypes that in order to be a part of if you're going to be gay, you have to look and act a certain way.
Right.
Which means then that the left is the ones now, and then liberal gender studies, which, of course, when you practice identity politics, and everybody has to have, as I like to say, original racial or sexual sins. The whole concept of original sin, that you're guilty because, in essence, because you exist.
Right.
You're guilty. You're guilty as you have committed a sin. When you are born into a certain physical group, that in order to back that up, you have to continue to perpetuate the myth that you have to act in a stereotypical way in order to fit that. And even people on the left now are starting to understand that. But in order to have identity politics, that's a must. Well, you can't have identity politics without stereotypes.
Okay, but if Pete Buttigieg came out on a campaign stage in leather hot pants and his theme song was "It's Raining Men," they would do the same thing in the opposite direction. He's going out of his way. He's trying too hard. It's almost as if he's making fun of being gay. I don't know what they want. I have no idea where the hell they're going with any of this. And by the way, they don't either. They really don't.
They really don't.
They don't. You know what? You know where they're going? We're not satisfied. Sorry, try again, and it doesn't matter who you are.
Well, but it gets back to what you said, and you were the first to come up with this, where you said we had talked about identity politics and how identity politics needs a victim and an oppressor.
Yes.
But then they kept expanding the pie of who was a victim, and so they had to keep expanding the pie of who was an oppressor, to the point, as we've talked about now, that now you can be a liberal feminist lesbian and you're the oppressor.
Right.
And you can be Martina Navratilova, and now you're the oppressor. That what it came down to, and I think this is a perfect example, is that, as you have said now it's come to people, whether it's Ocasio-Cortez, who she doesn't look for anybody for support, because why? She's a victim of everybody. She's a victim of Republicans. She's a victim of Democrats. She's a victim of Trump, but she's also a victim of Nancy Pelosi. She's a victim of everybody that the left is. When you keep expanding the definition and the pie of the victims and the oppressors, then eventually you become a victim who was oppressed by everybody and every instance, and every second that you live, there is something else in the culture that is oppressing you. That, and you talked about that and said that is the natural progression when you start at the point that the Democrats and liberals started at.
Everybody who is not me is my oppressor at some level. And as she said, AOC, I'm the boss. I'm my own hero. I'm the victim. Everybody else is an oppressor. You don't matter. I don't care who you are. And you're not going to satisfy whatever you think you're going to satisfy. You're not going to be identified until I identify you. And I don't care if you like it or not.
Now, I will say that mindset did give me some of the most enjoyable talk radio of reading this article over the last 15 minutes.
It gets better. And frankly, this is why I love sobriety, because it's free.
Oh, I don't think I could.
Oh, wait a minute. We get paid for it, don't we?
Could you try to imagine analyzing that article drunk? I don't think we could have done it. What?
I don't know that there's enough alcohol on the planet.
866-90 Red Eye.
RoadCheck is a critical aspect of the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance's strategy for keeping our highways safe. This year, RoadCheck will take place June 4th through the 6th and will focus on steering and suspension systems. Despite each year's focus, thousands of vehicles are placed out of service due to brake violations that are related to brake stroke in particular. To prepare for RoadCheck or your next route, make sure your brakes are operating properly and confirm that the brake stroke on each wheel end is correct. This means that the air pressure should be between 90 and 100 psi. Check your brake lining or pad for proper thickness too. Take your RoadTrek prep one step further. Stop into a participating TA truck service May 1st through June 6th for a free mid-trip inspection to help avoid being placed out of service.
This maintenance tip is brought to you by TA Truck Service. More bays, more expertise, more solutions.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
6.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Okay, we had to take that sidetrack there just to let you into the mindset of modern liberalism today, and the Pete Buttigieg thing had been around for a while about how the left is viewing him. So we had to take a moment to just let you see the insanity just overall of what's going on in the liberal world today, and that whole gender studies program at Yale just shows you in that professor. It's insanity.
If Pete Buttigieg was a gay Republican or a gay conservative, I would expect that, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That would fit that mold. But no, modern day liberalism. See, they're not right now. They're not battling Trump. I know they say they are. We know they all hate Trump, and the whole idea is, of course, to beat Trump in the end. But they're going to go through a lot in tearing themselves down time and time again between now and then.
I think, sociologically looking at a particular political party and what their thought process is about what they should be. And it is growing. It's not all in the Democrat Party, but it is the growing base that's controlling the Democrat Party, which is I'm a victim of everybody, even inside my party.
Right.
I don't know how you build any unity long term.
Well, in like gender studies,
right?
If it were gender studies, and they would say, okay, on the positions in terms of what he believes, here's where we believe it would affect these genders or whatever. That would be one thing, but no, it was about aesthetics. It was about identity.
Yep. Coming up, going down the path to impeachment. That's the Democrats' successful strategy.
You don't have to be a big fleet to get big fleet savings on tires, retreads, and tire services. As a member of the Michelin Advantage program, fleets and owner-operators can enjoy competitive program pricing on Michelin tires and retreads, not to mention access to online business tools and training opportunities. Plus, Michelin will waive the dispatch fee for every Michelin on-call emergency roadside service call. And the best part? Membership is free. Signing up is simple and takes a few quick minutes. So simple that small fleet owner Kevin Rutherford called it a no-brainer. He said, quote, "There's no downside. It's free to join, and I just wouldn't run my business without it." You can join Kevin and thousands of other fleet owners and owner-operators today by signing up for the Michelin Advantage program at michelintruck.com/advantage.
Young, fresh, hip, and cool. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on the new Red Eye Radio.
Yeah.
That's it. 866-90 Red Eye. And look, at least with Deep Voice Guy, our BS is easily understood.
Exactly. We don't change the rules.
You get into the whole gender studies thing; it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah. All right, let's get back to where the Democrats are going here on impeachment. I think it was CNN where let me just quickly go to it here. I think it was the headline that they had. Trump walkout marks point of no return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess the point is when I read that article, it's I thought this yesterday after I saw the news headlines, when I saw Trump walked out, and by the time we got to 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was able to see the news for the day before I went to sleep. I went, if there's going to be a turning point, today's the turning point.
Right.
Because of what happened with Pelosi backing off and then coming out stronger. And then by the end of the night, it was like flip-flop, back and forth to, okay. And oh, by the way, I guess it wouldn't be criminal obstruction of justice, but by refusing the subpoenas, they're accusing Trump of obstruction of justice.
Right.
Too.
It's a new obstruction.
A new obstruction.
All new obstruction.
All new obstruction of justice. So it seems as if, again, because the leadership is out there talking about it, means there's a tremendous amount of pressure inside from the left, which it has been controlling the narrative of the Democrats. Clearly, Nancy is being affected by it, and the goal of the left is to make her the puppet.
Right.
We've also said the same thing with the candidates that are running. They may not want Joe Biden, but I think they might be comfortable, a significant portion of that far left, because I think they believe that they can make Joe Biden also a puppet to do their bidding.
He's a better puppet.
Yeah. He might be a better puppet than even Bernie Sanders. I look and go, well, Bernie, he's his own person. Who knows? We might be able to have, better luck with Biden again.
And Biden looks like Jeff Dunham's puppet, Walter.
Walter. Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
He's already got that going for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're in trouble if Jeff Dunham comes out and says, "I'm for Biden." Who's pulling the strings there?
Right. The real puppet master. Is an actual puppet master.
But I think look. We're trying to analyze this, and we started off the show by saying this. We're trying to analyze this by the way that we think. And I believe that, we try to be critical thinkers. We know that the people that listen to our show pride themselves in being critical thinkers too. And I think one of the mistakes is the fact that we may think, well, they know this isn't going to work, as if they think like we do. Because we look down the path of impeachment and say, well, where are you going to go? You're not going to remove him from office. And it gets back to when we played the audio cut from Molly Hemingway, who was on Fox News yesterday and was asked about it. And she said, look, you've had Democrats for 2.5 years that have whipped up their base and whipped up their members of Congress. As she mentioned, something that we've mentioned a few times this week, you had Adam Schiff out there saying he has seen, he knows the evidence for for Trump committing treason by colluding with the Russians, that the evidence of treason is there. And the Democrats have been pounding this for 2 years. Their leaders have been pounding it for 2 years. The Mueller report comes out. Sorry, nothing here.
Yeah.
Well, they're just whipped up into a rage, and part of the justification for that opinion that we give is by the polling numbers that we have brought to you of how many Democrats still believe that the Russians hacked into the election machine, even though there was never one story of it written. But when they kept with that question over and over again, as Eric, as you defined, you said, look, there wasn't even just a general allegation of collusion. There was a general allegation question. That's all there ever was. Mm-hmm. But the media asked that question so many times that then you had Democrat politicians like Adam Schiff and others following him who said, no, the evidence is there. Trump colluded with the Russians. He committed treason. They kept asking that question. That question became a statement of fact. Yeah. And now that statement of fact has been pulled out from underneath them, and they're just in a wild, incoherent rage. And so we sit there and say, what are they up to? Well, if we're really critical thinkers, we're probably dumb for doing any overcritical thinking of where they're at right now, because it's just rage.
Yeah.
It's all it is.
It is.
And so to try to figure out where rage is going to go and saying to ourselves, well, have the Democrats figured out where their rage is going to go or where this is going to go? Well, I don't know how you figure out rage. How do you control rage? I think that's what Pelosi's dealing with right now. I believe that she and Schumer have been in politics long enough to probably understand that impeachment without any evidence of a high crime and misdemeanor. Remember, they can say it all day. Everybody knows that Clinton was impeached, not for sex. He was impeached for the lying to a grand jury in a sexual harassment case.
Right. That's
what it was about. They've got nothing on Trump. They have nothing.
And so I honestly believe that there's a couple of things here. I think they know of the storm that's coming their way. What better way to create shelter from, whether it's the IG report, the Attorney General, or the federal prosecutor, or anything else. You try and hedge against that by moving toward impeachment, because the story will be impeachment. If Horowitz issues a report, that in and of itself, without an indictment attached to it, which would come later, if it's taken by the Attorney General to that level, is not going to really lead over an impeachment. Nothing, in fact, will lead in the liberal media over the impeachment of Trump. I'm guessing that CNN will go nonstop. It'll be nothing but the continuing coverage of the impeachment. And they'll just replay. It'll be like the OJ trial. They'll just replay it at night. They'll just replay the proceedings, the hearings, and it'll be nonstop.
Well, but that's the whole point, that people are saying, well, they're never going to come to a vote. They're never going to vote on it. Well, what are they going to do then? If they keep this, how long does this go? How long can Nancy keep flipping back and forth? Because if you look at the progression over the last month, if you look from the Mueller report, when they were talking impeachment, to where it is now, the energy level right now and the political over-the-top rhetoric to impeach is greater now than it's ever been before. We are closer to an impeachment inquiry than we were a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. How does she turn it in the other direction?
I don't know how you back away from where she went yesterday.
And so if you get to the point of having the inquiry, then you have the hearings. What, you're going to have all of this? And you're going to say, sorry, we have nothing. We're not going to have a vote on impeachment?
Right.
And this is what you get when you're talking about a party being controlled by incoherent emotional rage. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, what are the Democrats thinking? maybe the only Democrats that are thinking the only Democrats that are thinking right now may be a few in the leadership saying, how do we stop this incoherent emotional rage that's coming from the AOC and the Omar and the Tlaib wing and the Swalwell wing? How do we stop this?
Right.
That might be the only attempt at coherent thinking inside the Democrat Party, is those who realize, Donna Shalala said it yesterday. I've been down the impeachment road before. She was very measured in her words, the Democrat Congresswoman out of Florida, very measured in her words. She said, I went through this before in the Clinton administration, and she realized how it backfired, even though that was a legit charge.
Right.
In my opinion,
yes.
You can say, well, you shouldn't go after. Well, if you don't think that was a legit charge, and you truly don't, if you believe that was not deserving of impeachment, okay, let's say you truly believe it was not. That's your honest opinion. Well, then honestly, if that's what Donna Shalala believes, being part of that administration, she's looking at this going, they got nothing here. There's not even that. There's not even a crime. She said, you better have the facts. And she said, I don't have the facts. I'm thinking to myself, whoa, okay, must be the Florida district that she's in.
Well, and again, that's what it comes down to. What about those districts? And there are going to be key states. I mean, Florida's it. You know, they call it the wall, right? Well, think about then Rust Belt, okay? Think about the states that Trump won in. Think about, well, if it's the steel industry, while the tariffs may be going away, part of the steel industry benefited from those tariffs for a short time, right? He showed them love for a short time, even if those tariffs go away completely. Well, now you got to go to the Corn Belt. And if you're talking about those districts where those Democrats are on the fence, where they don't know which way it's going to go, because if it goes for Trump.
Yeah, but you make a great case because everybody's saying Florida is it.
Right.
You know, that Florida is one what will determine this election.
Right.
And you look at it just out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about Donna Shalala and what she said.
Right.
Florida versus Biden. This is the Florida Atlantic University. Okay. This is the presidential election. Trump 50, Biden 50. Trump versus Sanders. Trump 51, Sanders 49.
Right.
Trump versus Warren. Trump 52, Warren 48. Trump versus Harris. Trump 53, Harris 47. Trump versus Buttigieg. Trump 52, Buttigieg 48. In every one of those, you say that there's a tie there, but every one of those, Trump is at 50.
You've got to be careful.
Trump is at 50.
If you're in Trump country, you've got to be careful. If your district is there, you're going to have to be careful how you talk. Then you're going to have to talk about a vote.
And people say, well, but Trump and Biden are tied, so Biden could still say that. You're right. Mm-hmm. But Trump's been vetted.
Right.
Biden has not.
He's the incumbent. Biden is not.
Biden has not been vetted as a presidential candidate. It's a whole different ballgame.
And if you're at 50-50, again, that's the fence. You don't know which way it's going to go. You have to assume right now at least half of your constituents are Trump supporters.
Right.
And you've got to be careful of how you talk. You certainly better be careful of how you vote. You got to be careful about behind the scenes what you're saying to the speaker. Because if you're in Shalala's territory or in her seat right now, from her perspective, you're probably calling Pelosi going, don't bring this to a vote. Quit talking, and let's move on from impeachment because we can't win this.
Yeah, but Pelosi, if that's the direction, Pelosi has to have a consistent message, and yesterday she did not.
You can't walk away from it.
Right.
The gauntlets were laid down. She changed drastically from something she was saying weeks ago, yesterday afternoon alone.
Yep. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara along with Eric Harley. Let's quickly go to Mike in Amarillo, Texas. Mike, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, sounds like some people at Yale have been eating mushroom pizzas followed by brownies and washing it down with Kool-Aid. And we know what the Kool-Aid is.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I've got a way that we could end this whole debacle about impeachment with one piece of paper. All William Barr has to do is agree to go, or just show up and answer the subpoena, and say, I would like to make an opening statement, and then have 435 U.S. Marshals hand each congressman present two copies, and say, I will read this. Please sign it before I say anything else, and read them their Miranda warnings, and put them on notice that this proceeding is now part of our investigation.
But it
the
wouldn't.
whole thing goes away quickly.
Well, but it wouldn't fit because there's no reasonable suspicion of each and every one of them. Political suspicion.
Yeah, that'd be a massive failure, Mike.
Yeah, it would.
It sounds nice, but it wouldn't work.
It's something we wouldn't support. We know what you're trying to say, but the fact of the matter is that Barr's going to do the work. And as we said, with the other side of it, the investigation into the Justice Department and whether or not there was an abuse of power, whether they lied to the FISA courts or whatever it is, he needs to bring the evidence. Just like we said about the Mueller investigation on Trump. He's going to have to do the work.
Yeah.
He's going to have to find the tangible evidence.
He needs to do what an attorney general is supposed to do.
Yep.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Pilot Flying J Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and the world, 866-90 Red Eye. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. In the news today, Jefferson City, Missouri took a direct hit from a huge tornado last night. The wedge tornado, one that is wider in the funnel than it is tall, was observed over Jefferson City shortly after 11 p.m. on Wednesday night. It moved at 40 miles an hour and sent debris nearly 13,000 feet into the air, according to the National Weather Service. Here is meteorologist Derek Van Dam.
There have been reports of trees being completely stripped of their leaves and their bark, power lines completely snapped over, and of course that makes search and rescue that much more difficult when roads become impassable because of the power lines and the trees that are covering the roadways.
According to CNN, no deaths have been reported in the city as of Thursday morning. Jefferson City Police Lieutenant David Williams said at a news conference a couple of hours ago. Missouri Governor Mike Parsons said on Twitter that the Jefferson City tornado was one of the many throughout the state. Major tornadoes across the state, including Jefferson City, were doing okay, but praying that those that were caught in the damage, some are still trapped. Local emergency crews are on site and are assisting, according to the governor of the state of Missouri. So
this was the 8th anniversary of the 2011 tornado that hit Joplin. There was a tornado yesterday afternoon, late actually into the afternoon, into the early evening, that was spotted near Joplin that did some damage. There was another deadly tornado in that region, and the reports are there are at least 3 dead from that tornado. This one in Jefferson City. Right now, what we're learning is that the local officials are saying that all hospitals in that area are in emergency mode. They are in disaster mode right now, and they have well over at least 100 injuries, and they don't know. They have not reported any fatalities. But again, the officials, as you just mentioned, local police chief, speaking at just after 2 a.m., plans to have another press conference here in the next couple of hours. 6 a.m. is the next planned press conference, and they will update the public there in Jefferson City area. Of course, they won't be able to assess the damage the chief was talking about just after 2 a.m. Until after the sun comes up. They are asking people to avoid that area. They don't need people to come in and volunteer at this point. The best thing that they can do is avoid that area. And they're very busy, as you can imagine, manning the 911 calls that are coming in, all of those reports from the damage in that area.
Meanwhile, it looks like Democrats and Nancy Pelosi may be moving down the path to impeachment. Yesterday, Donald Trump said, sorry, no infrastructure meeting he was supposed to have with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. But before that meeting took place, Nancy Pelosi accused him of a cover-up.
We have investigations like nobody's ever had before, and we did nothing wrong. They would have loved to have said we colluded. They would have loved it. These people were out to get us. The Republican Party and President Trump. They were out to get us. This was a one-sided, horrible thing. No collusion, no obstruction, no nothing. They issued 50 orders authorizing use of pen registers. Think of that, though. 500 witnesses. And then I have Nancy Pelosi go out and say that the President of the United States engaged in a cover-up. Things are going well. And I said, let's have the meeting on infrastructure. We'll get that done easily. That's one of the easy ones. And instead of walking in happily into a meeting, I walk in to look at people that had just said that I was doing a cover-up. I don't do cover-ups.
So there you go, where it goes, because Nancy Pelosi in and out of a few meetings yesterday, and it seemed like the narrative was changing as quickly as the hours were passing yesterday. So who knows where they are right now. We've had a lot of discussion on it tonight. Where are the Democrats actually going? We believe here that they're driven by their rage. I don't think there's much logic to what's going on whatsoever, except, as we have said over the past couple of years, that slowly but surely the Democratic Party is being taken over by the radical left. We think that Mollie Hemingway from Fox News contributor and from thefederalist.com said it very clearly yesterday afternoon when she said, look, for 2 years, the Democrats have promised their constituents, and the Democratic leadership has promised their rank and file in the Congress that they had something on Trump. As she mentioned, as we have mentioned every day, Adam Schiff out there for over the last year and a half, stating fact that he has seen the evidence that Trump committed treasonous collusion against the Russians. This has been harped over and over and over and over for the last year. Eric and I have talked many times about the polls that exist out there, which are mind-boggling when you see that the majority of Democrats still believe that the Russians hacked into the election machine. It's not true. And poll after poll still shows, well, up until a couple of months ago, still showed that Democrats still believed that the Russians hacked into the election machines and that Trump was a part of it. All of a sudden, the Mueller decision comes out, and sorry, there's nothing there. I agree, as Mollie Hemingway does. They're just enraged. It's a delusional, incoherent rage that is going on right now in Democrats, and the leadership doesn't know what to do. We mentioned that Donna Shalala, who was part of the part of the Clinton administration and went through the impeachment and is in Florida. That will be a swing state in all likelihood coming up in this election and could be the key to who wins the 2020 election, was saying, well, we really don't, there's no evidence out there. I'd have to see it. Others, even Nancy Pelosi, are stating that the cover-up itself is obstruction of justice. And the cover-up is the fact that Trump has said, no, my personal advisors, legal and otherwise, You don't get a right to talk to them. And the other thing that they're trying to say is, you've heard, we played the audio cut from Beto O'Rourke yesterday stating, and others, well, Barr said he won't testify. That is not true. Barr said he would testify before the House. He would not testify before the House's lawyers. He said, my only obligation is to testify before the elected representatives of the United States. They can have their lawyers right next to them. I don't answer their questions. I answer the questions from the members of Congress. And they said, nope, not good enough. You either agree to testify before our lawyers or you don't testify at all. He said, fine, I don't testify at all.
Right. They knew they were setting the table for an impossible condition, that there would be no response, that they would not agree. But this is exactly the tactic that they knew would also win, because you need to make it look like there's a cover-up. How do you do that? You issue subpoenas that, in the case of Barr, would have compelled Barr to break the law, to do something illegal. You knew that he was not going to respond to that, and so you build the case. This is the all-new case. By the way, they've moved on from the Mueller report. They're not dealing with the Mueller report. They're dealing with the subpoena thing. That's their only hope. It's the only thing they've got left, the non-response. And this is where we are. Because we couldn't get you with the Mueller investigation, and the Mueller report fell short. There's nothing there. Well, we got to create something that also isn't there. They've got nothing, but they'll make it look like something.
Where they go from this point on, I don't know how Nancy Pelosi puts it in reverse. And I just look over the last month, and not that there weren't calls for impeachment, but they weren't really being considered, to the point we got to yesterday where she came out and said that it might be impeachable because of the president not allowing his inner circle, which he doesn't have to. The precedent on executive privilege is absolutely clear on that, and we explained it for people who don't know, and we'll do it again. The president, for example, cannot have Gerald Nadler come and testify before him.
Right.
Gerald Nadler can't have, as the head of the Judiciary Committee, House Judiciary Committee, can't have the president just come in and testify. There's a thing called executive privilege now, where Congress has oversight over the executive branch. For example, the Justice Department, when it were Attorney General, is by law required to testify to members of Congress, but not to members that aren't members of, not to people that aren't members of Congress.
Right.
That's who he has to testify in front of. And the Democrats changed the rule, knowing that he would say no to that, knowing that they were making impossible conditions. But the most important part, that you can understand the Democrats' motivation, that is not debatable, is the fact that they want William Barr to break the law. They want William Barr to give them grand jury testimony from the Mueller report, which they can't do. They want a fully redacted report. He can't do that. He can't do that by law. And they're making it clear they wish for him to break the law. It's really an amazing thing here. And, we got into impeachment before, and the comparison to the two other impeachments. One would be Bill Clinton, who, by the way, to I can't think of the one representative who was out there harping the other day, the Democrats, stating that, well, they impeached Clinton for sex, which they did not. They impeached him for lying before a grand jury in a sexual harassment suit. And so we can impeach Trump for Representative Cohen, that we can impeach Trump for raping the country. And that just shows the rage, the absolute rage that they're full of. But you can look at that and say, okay, there's a difference. He actually broke the law and had to admit that he broke the law. And there's no doubt that he broke the law in that particular case. Nobody is saying that he did not. They say it's sex, they just ignore the other parts of it. And the other would be Andrew Johnson, who wanted to fire his Secretary of War, and Congress did not want him to do that, so they passed a law stating that he couldn't fire his Secretary of War. Andrew Johnson said, "You can't tell me what to do in my executive branch," so he fired him.
Yep.
And that, at that moment, set up a separation of powers argument, which then Congress impeached him for, and it's always been viewed as a bogus impeachment. Well, they're trying to make the same case here, that there is no separation of powers, and Congress gets to dictate to the president what the president must do and what he must do with the staff that is only there to serve him legally, and to give him advisement personally as the president, not personally as a individual, as would be Giuliani, for example, but personally to give him advice as president of the United States. Executive privilege holds there. Democrats are screaming, for example, that there is no executive privilege for example, Don McGahn, his lawyer, that his presidential lawyer, because McGahn testified to Mueller, and he gives up that executive privilege and any immunity because he testified once. They don't have a legal case there because he testified to Mueller, who was part of the executive branch and not part of the legislative branch. We know this is tough for any Democrat out there who doesn't understand the three branches of government, but that's the majority of Democrats that don't understand it, based on the polling that exists out there that shows the majority of Americans have no idea what the three branches of government are, and therefore don't understand their purpose, and therefore don't understand the law.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, if you forget what happened during the Kavanaugh thing, you have to remind yourself that they don't care about process anymore.
No, they don't. Process doesn't matter at all.
Nadler doesn't care that a subpoena cannot legally can't change the law at all, can't change the rules.
Right.
But he doesn't care about that.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue was in Utah, where he signed an agreement between the Forest Service and the state on forest stewardship.
This is a commitment. This is not just an agreement. It's a commitment to work together in a shared arrangement, a shared stewardship, as co-owners, co-stewards of public lands.
He emphasized the importance of federal, state, and local entities working together.
We want to manage the whole of land of Utah in a healthy way for water quality, for recreation, for wildlife, for fisheries, for all the multiple use benefits, as well as the economic benefits that our national forests have in the United States.
Utah is the 50th state Secretary Perdue has visited as part of his efforts to hear from the country's farmers and ranchers directly.
We have saved the best for last, and we hope it won't be our last time here.
This is Stephanie Ho for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The USDA report is brought to you by Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Highway Diesel Fuel.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we will have more on the Democrats and are they going down the road of impeachment?
Right.
Also, an update from the storms last night.
Yeah, in fact, coming up here in just a couple of moments, we'll have our meteorologist, John Trout, who has the latest from Jefferson City, some of the details from that storm late last night.
Americans feel good about the economy. Latest poll out there, and they give Trump credit. CBS News poll. Most Americans remain confident about the U.S. economy and in their own financial situation. And more now give President Trump's policies credit for the strong economy than did so last year. 7 in 10 say the economy is in good shape, including a quarter who say it's very good. Nearly all Republicans and most Democrats and independents share this view. Americans increasingly give the president credit for the economy. 41% of those say the economy is good, who say the economy is good, say Mr. Trump's policies are mostly responsible, up from 32% at the beginning of 2018. Republicans give the president relatively more credit for the economy than Democrats do. Really? Oh, I'm shocked by that. Show you how fake news works, though. Amid congressional Democrats' attempts to investigate the president's finances, 40% of Americans think Mr. Trump has financially profited from his time as presidency, more so than the 24 who think he has made financial sacrifices. I don't know any story written out there that says the president has made more money because of the presidency, even in any liberal publication.
Yeah, make that case. Yeah. Here's the latest on the Jefferson City tornado from our own John Trout.
Late Wednesday into early Thursday, we have reports of a tornado that hit Jefferson City, Missouri. We have meteorologist Liz Lightman from the Storm Prediction Center to tell us more.
We did have a tornado move through parts of Jefferson City, Missouri. Pretty extensive damage to houses. The school was apparently damaged. Trees, power lines are down. I haven't heard anything as far as fatalities, but it looks like the Missouri Highway Patrol did report multiple injuries.
Missouri particularly hard hit yesterday, late into the evening. What about Joplin? What have you heard about the tornado that may have gone through that region?
I believe in Golden City we did have some fatalities, structural damage in both locations, and it looks like a pretty extensive large tornado there as well.
There's meteorologist Liz Lightman for Red Eye Radio. I'm meteorologist John Trout.
Disturbing on so many levels. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Well, the darling of the left.
Yeah.
The darling of CNN. The darling of MSNBC for such a long time.
Mr. Bombshell.
Mr. Bombshell, celebrity attorney Michael Avenatti, was indicted by federal prosecutors Wednesday for stealing the identity of his former client, Stormy Daniels, in order to claim more than $300,000 she was owed for a tell-all book about her efforts to expose President Trump. This from National Review. In the indictment, prosecutors for the Southern District of New York accused Avenatti of forging Daniels' signature on a letter instructing her literary agent to wire her book advance money to an account that he controlled. Daniels, an adult film star born Stephanie Clifford, is not identified by name by the timeline, and other details laid out in the document make clear she is the client in question. The literary agent then wired $148,000 to the account, which Avenatti promptly began spending for his own purposes, including on airfare, hotels, car services, restaurants and meal delivery, online retailers, payroll for his law firm, and another business he owned, and insurance, the indictment reads. Just so you know, the darling of CNN and MSNBC.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Couldn't get enough of his insight. When we talk about the impeaching of Trump, I got to read this part this little section from Newsbusters. On Cuomo Primetime Tuesday, CNN's Chris Cuomo weighed in on the impeachment debate, pointing out the pluses and minuses of going down the impeachment road. According to Cuomo, impeachment, quote, could be the best way to get you the information you deserve so that you can decide if there were actual abuses of power here by the president. So he's saying Democrats, the positive is this could be the best way by going for impeachment, it could be the best way to get you the information you deserve so that you can decide if there was an actual abuse of power here by the president, end of quote. In other words, Congress must impeach President Trump so that way they can figure out whether or not he deserves impeachment.
Okay.
And this, thanks, Brian. Brian found this story for us from Fox Business, and it's really interesting because you and I talk about the whole tariffs, and a lot of times you don't know. It's hard to figure out, when you place a tariff, when any country places a tariff, what happens? What can be affected, or how much of an economy can be affected by it? Because it's not just with the tariff, the burden that puts on the person who is buying that product, but everybody along the line who produces that product or uses that product to produce anything that they buy, and how that affects the markets that they are in. And that's always one of the tough things about tariffs, is figuring out the full economic impact of a tariff. Mm-hmm. Fox News, or Fox Business News, implementing further tariffs in the escalating U.S.-China trade dispute could lead to as many as 12,000 retail store closures and threaten $40 billion in sales, according to a report by international investment bank UBS. The U.S. retail industry store count fell by 3,000 locations, or more than 5% in the first quarter of 2019, making it the steepest rate of decline of retail outlets and locations in the United States in at least a decade, UBS analyst Jay Soul said in a note to investors. New tariffs would be especially damaging to leading retailers with earnings before interest and taxes, before taxes and interest, tax margins of less than 3%, which operate more than 12,000 stores and account for $42 billion in revenue, saying that if you only have a 3% profit margin, the tariffs will affect you.
Oh, yeah.
And put you out of business completely. Right. And we've talked about that in the past. Eroding margins could cause an already accelerated trend of store closures to intensify. The closure of even 6,000 of the at-risk stores out of the 12,000 would be highly disruptive to the retail industry as a whole. Quote, our view is the market is not realizing how much brick and mortar retail is incrementally struggling and how new 25% tariffs could force widespread store closures, the note said. So, again, you don't know, and a lot of times you don't know till a few years later until you can analyze what went on in the economy. Last thing I want to bring out up here on the show today before we get out of here, the Brexit vote. Again, let me just read a couple of, this is Wall Street Journal here. Britain's vote for Brexit was supposed to end Nigel Farage's career as a country's Eurosceptic cheerleader-in-chief. Instead, it's relaunched it as Prime Minister Theresa May's tenure enters its dying days amid a rebellion in her party over her efforts this week to win opposition Labour Party backing for her thrice-rejected Brexit deal. On Wednesday, Andrea Leadsom became the latest cabinet member to quit over the government's handling of Brexit. As the conflict brewed, Mr. Farage on Tuesday made his way amid a blaze of fireworks, stadium rock music, and cheers of Nigel, 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 the Trump of Great Britain, across the stage of a West London exhibition center, and delivered a Brexit message he has repeated across the country for 6 weeks. Quote, I made the biggest political mistake of my life, he said. I believed that they would deliver. 3 years. Think about that, Eric. 3 years. After Britain voted to quit the European Union, it still hasn't left. And Mr. Farage is back on the political trail with the establishment in his sights as British voters head today to elect lawmakers for the European Parliament. The EU's legislator, Mr. Farage's newly created Brexit Party, is well ahead in the polls. Some analysts predict that this group will get more votes than the ruling Conservative Party and the main opposition Labour Party combined. The Brexit Party, founded around 4 months ago, has no manifesto and only one aim: get the UK out of the EU, even if it means leaving without the divorce deal. And Eric, it gets back to what we said a long time ago. Mr. Farage said this: this is now a more fundamental question of democracy. Do we trust our political class? You and I said the problem with the EU, and the EU, it's always been the fact that even if you do have, your European Union representatives, that the fact is you can be overruled by a bureaucracy that you didn't elect. Right. And it can affect what happens in your country. Mm-hmm. And we've stated this you and I have been together for 14 years, saying that's always a weakness when you get into a union kind of, not just a trade pact, because this is more than a trade pact, where you decide that we're going to share a currency, that we're going to be tied together, even though you don't share the same politics. The whole deal, we go back to the Amero, that conspiracy theory. But really, when the Canadian think tank, put together that whole study of whether North America should do the same thing as Europe did, which would have been Canada, United States, and Mexico get into a North American union like the Europeans did and share the same currency. Mm-hmm. And their conclusion was no, that we shouldn't do that. Well, the last thing that America would want to do, the last thing I want to do is tie the currency that we have to Mexico. Last thing I think anyone would wish to do is tie your economy to another world's economy, that the value of your economy is somehow judged by another country's economy, that you have no legislative power as to how they decide to run that country. We've always thought, and you and I have been together 14 years and stated, even before all of this happened, the Brexit thing, that's the problem if you get into a union like that. Now, of course, the Canadian think tank said no. We came to the conclusion it wasn't a good idea. And then the Amero conspiracy theory went on for about 2 or 3 years.
Of course.
That secretly, behind the scenes, America and the Canada and Mexico were trying to do a North American Union with the Amero as the currency.
I'm convinced it's still going on. In fact, I'm convinced the conspiracy still lives. What doesn't live much longer is Theresa May's career as prime minister, and that's the question.
Think about this, though, that we talk about what brings people back to democracy. In this country right now, look at what we're going through. Mm-hmm. We're going through the gimmeism stage, which is the promotion of socialism through the gimmeism concept without mentioning the takeism part of it. Mm-hmm. The new word we created this week, takeism.
Takeism.
And most societies go through that. Great Britain has gone through that. But think about how this has brought to the Great Britain, the people of Great Britain, the thought of democracy. The thought that we can't trust the establishment, and we believe that the people that we put in power even wish us to be governed by people that don't directly represent us in the European Union. That's why when it comes out and, you see everything that's happened since that time, I think it's only, it may have solidified, it may have even changed people's minds in Great Britain to say, whoa, we're not being responsive to our people. And so I thought it was interesting that, Farage actually said that this is now a more fundamental question of democracy.
I think it is, and it's interesting because he says even if they have to go forward even without the divorce deal, wow,
I know.
That's complete chaos.
It is.
I mean, I don't know how you manage that. There are a number of things that have to be worked out, the logistics of your borders and who can travel when and where and who you're trading with, and a number of things that would essentially stop without that divorce deal for who knows how long until you get a divorce deal. I've never seen that kind of craziness. But
then you have to ask the question, and we can't feel it because we don't live there,
right.
And it's very tough to feel what's going on until you actually live in a society every single day and sort of figure out what's going on. But is the anger that great? Where it is, and we forget about this. Remember, it's not as much anymore, but people forget that when Trump was running, how many people called this show and they just wanted to elect Trump to destroy everything. Mm-hmm. Now we don't hear that Trump destroy everything. Mm-hmm. We say Trump fix things and Trump do it, but when he was running, it was break everything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Destroy the Republican Party. We don't care. How many calls did we get on that?
Right. Well, was the Brexit vote? Was that entire thing about a massive reaction? And then realizing, oh, wait, in order to undo this, it's going to take some work.
Yeah, but now you're getting to the point that the work that's been done the last 3 years, if the Brexit Party has more power, they realize, well, wait a minute, maybe the chaos is better. This is the whole point. Maybe the chaos is better than our elected representatives not representing us in the way that we wish them to represent us.
Well, because you can't stay here, and clearly the voters have spoken. So, yeah, I would say he's right on that level. The chaos will be worked out, hopefully.
866-90 Red Eye.
What's the difference between standard number 2 diesel and premium fuel? Ron Jessen is Director of Product Management for Cenex, the makers of Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Diesel Fuel, and he fills us in.
You may want to consider the total operational cost behind the price of the pump. If you look at the cost for replacement and you look at the cost of ongoing maintenance, unfortunately, those costs haven't gone down. They've actually continued to increase. But switching to a premium diesel fuel can really result in some large operational savings with the fuel economy and reducing the equipment repair costs. Our fleet owners, if you want to consider trying a premium diesel fuel in the past, or if you have considered it in the past, now is really the time to take advantage of that with the lower diesel fuel prices to try out that premium diesel fuel.
There are more than 1,450 Cenex locations in 19 states across the Midwest and Pacific Northwest. Visit Cenex.com to find a Cenex location and learn more. This report is a service of Shell Rotella.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.